Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the council meeting for Monday, May 26th, 2025. Please rise for the playing of the national anthem and a moment of reflection.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command.
Car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits.
God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you. This time I'll look to Councillor Phillips to read the land acknowledgement.
The land on which council meets today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Nishnabek, and Attawandaronk, and the Mississaugas of the First Nation peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Ditch with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many Indigenous peoples made up of First Nation, Inuit, and Métis. The Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement should remind us of our responsibility to ensure the dish, the territories on which we live and work, is never emptied, and that we take care of the land and its inhabitants in a way that ensures its future sustainability.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Starting with the Mayor's report this evening, we want to begin by passing on our condolences to the family and friends of Steve Gallagher, who last week passed away after valiantly battling ALS for 6 years. Steve is well known in the community and became a tireless advocate for awareness and increased funding for ALS research. We are saddened that he is not with us anymore, but it's incumbent on all of us to ensure his work continues and that his goal for a better way of life, better quality of life for those afflicted with ALS comes to fruition. In terms of news and updates, I was away last week, I guess 2 weeks ago, at the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Cities Initiative, the annual general meeting. And I do want to thank Deputy Mayor Phillips for stepping in my absence to be able to run the last council meeting. It was a good conference, an opportunity to work with mayors from both sides of the border on a number of important issues to all of us, both around the environmental sustainability of the Great Lakes as well as the economic sustainability of the Great Lakes. I am looking forward. Next year is St. Catharines, as I'm the co-chair, it's St. Catharines' opportunity to host. We will not be hosting in St. Catharines, however. We did do that just a couple of years ago. And so we're heading up the QEW to our friends in Hamilton. They will be hosting from May 6th to 8th next year. We are focusing on the economic sustainability piece of the equation, but it is an excellent opportunity for us to be able to work with elected officials on both sides of the border to deal with issues of common interest. We had an opportunity to meet with the governor of Wisconsin, which was a very fruitful conversation, and we appreciated hearing his thoughts on the current and ongoing tariff situation. Folk Arts, a big thank you to everyone who was involved with the Folk Arts Festival. It was a great month celebrating the different cultures here in our community, from the Ambassador Ball to the various open houses. The Niagara Folk Arts Festival has once again filled our hearts and, for me, my stomach, with incredible richness of our region. To everyone who opened their doors and shared their food, your culture, and their culture with the community, thank you. I'm already looking forward to next year's festival. I'm sure we will get an update from Councillor Stevens during his portion of the Mayor's report. He only missed 3. So he only missed 4 out of the 22 events. I know that's important to him, and so I wanted to give him kudos. He was definitely the councillor I saw out at the most. But I do want to say thank you. I saw a good chunk of council at the Folk Arts, and I know that the folks who run the Folk Arts Festival appreciate it as well. On Saturday, I had the opportunity to participate in the Rankin Cancer Run. This is the first time the event was back in person since the pandemic. It was a great day, over 8,000 participants who laced up for the cause. Since 2006, the run has raised over $12.6 million for local cancer care organizations. I want to thank Run Director Marianne Edwards, the Rankin family, and to all the runners, walkers, organizers, volunteers, and supporters who continue to make this event bigger and better every year. I want to give a special shout out to, Councillor Mako. Councillor Mako was on the Team STC team. Councillor Williamson, who was there but competed with Laura Secord, and shout out to Laura Secord for always bringing a big contingent to the Rankin Cancer Run. Am I missing anybody else around the horseshoe? Also, thank you to MP Biddle and MPP Jenny Stevens. Oh my gosh, Councillor Ratzlaff. Yes, and Councillor Ratzlaff, here's the thing. Councillor Ratzlaff beat me in the 5K, and so I didn't want to think about that right now. I did give him a shout out on the radio today when I was talking about it. I thought I was competing with Councillor Mako, but Councillor Mako decided to be the 30-minute pace bunny. And so he couldn't actually push the pace. He wasn't allowed to because he was supposed to be helping other runners reach their goals. Councillor Ratzlaff and I sort of wandered away, and then Councillor Ratzlaff's kids were beating us so badly, he went after them, and I was kind of in the middle there. But anyways, again, a big thank you to all the organizers of the Rankin Cancer Run. It's a fantastic event. I want to say this was their first time up at Brock University, but it's a great location and a lot of fun. It's just a really good time, and raising dollars that stay in our community for cancer and cancer treatment. Last week I had the opportunity to visit Triple M Metal as part of my Mayorlink visits to see firsthand the incredible work they're doing in our city. Triple M is new to St. Catharines. They've just opened up shop in the last couple of months. But the team there is focused on recycling and reducing waste, creating a more sustainable future, all while keeping safety and people at the core of their operation. So I want to thank them for their warm welcome and the tour of their facility. Last week, myself and Councillor McPherson visited the team at TSM Custom Millwork to celebrate their grand opening of their location at 218 Martindale Road. TSM works with some of the world's top brands in wine, spirits, cosmetics, and fragrance, offering a seamless process for initial design through to final installation of their custom crafted travel retail displays. They specialize in building custom fixtures for the travel retail market, including land, border, and airport duty-free stores, with completed projects across North, Central, and South America, as well as Europe. If you have flown through Pearson Airport, you have seen TSM's handiwork. Congratulations to the entire team. We're proud to see this kind of skill, innovation, and entrepreneurship thriving in St. Catharines. On Friday, I had the opportunity to celebrate 50 years of business with the De Palma family at their family-run business, the Furniture Gallery. You may know the Furniture Gallery from the single most recognizable jingle on the radio, which I'm not going to sing right now because I don't have the voice, but they were very happy when I was able to sing it to them. The Furniture Gallery stands as a beacon of quality and dedication in the world of home furnishings and accessories since 1975. Their journey, spanning over 5 decades, is marked by a commitment to providing exceptional service and unparalleled product knowledge, a testament to their deep-rooted experience in the industry. I want to say thank you to Frank Sr., Joanne, and Frank Jr. for the tour of the new location to 31 Nielsen Avenue, and more importantly, congratulations on 50 years, and I know Councillor Stevens was able to get there as well. We always appreciate that. It's in St. George's ward, true. Not that that's ever stopped you, Councillor. Earlier today, I had the opportunity to bring greetings at the 160th anniversary of the St. Catharines Hospital Auxiliary. And I want to thank Councillor Harris for being there today as well. The St. Catharines Hospital Auxiliary has been part of this community story for 160 years, founded back in 1865 before Canada was even a country. What started with 7 women brought together by Dr. Mack to support a new hospital for the poor has grown into a remarkable legacy of care and compassion. And as the oldest hospital auxiliary in Canada, their commitment continues to shape healthcare here in Niagara, and their impact is felt every day. Whether it is raising funds for life-saving medical equipment, providing much-needed comfort and companionship to patients and their families, or helping the hospital adapt and grow to meet the changing needs of our community, the auxiliary has been a constant, reliable source of care and compassion. Over their 160-year history, the auxiliary has raised more than $9 million to support critical hospital equipment and services. So a big thank you to everyone for their contributions to the auxiliary over the past 160 years, and we look forward to seeing their impact grow in the years to come. And congratulations goes out to the Buffalo Bandits, who this past weekend completed their three-peat, winning their third consecutive NLL championship. I don't normally talk about pro sports, except that there's a special shout out that goes to St. Catharines residents and former A's players Matt Vince, Steve Priolo, who is our reigning Athlete of the Year, and may be making a case for him to be awarded Athlete of the Year again next year, as well as Thomas Whitty for their big win. This weekend, Niagara will welcome 700 plus athletes, managers, coaches, officials, and volunteers from across Ontario for the 44th Ontario Parasport Games. From May 30th to June 1st, events will be held at sporting facilities across the Niagara region, including Canada Games Park and Brock University, which will play host to goalball, soccer, para-athletics, sitting volleyball, wheelchair tennis, para-karate, para-swimming, wheelchair basketball, and boccia. Events are free to attend, so go out and support the athletes this weekend. With that, I will open it up to council if anybody wants to add to the mayor's report for this week. Councillor Lindell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was a privilege for me to rep the City of St. Catharines, yourself, and MPP Stevens at the women's disc golf event, which is why I missed the Rankin event, and I'm sorry about that. There were 47 women who came from Rochester, New York, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and Edmonton, Alberta. There were 18 events across Canada, and St. Catharines is one of the only 3 in Ontario. We had businesses from Queenston Street in the City of St. Catharines supporting the event. There were lots of local shopping malls, hotels, eating establishments, and a lot of fun, good weather eventually during the day. I also want to do a shout out to the Parks and Recreation Department and Acting Director Anders and Mr. Nye and the municipal workers who made that park look absolutely stunning. There was flooding, they fixed that, they cut back trees so the baskets looked fantastic, and it just goes to show you how awesome our city staff is.
Excellent, and agreed wholeheartedly. Thank you, Councillor Lindell. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just shout out to the Grantham Lions Club. They had the annual guide dog walk on Sunday. And right now, we've raised over $12,500 to guide dogs. It was a great turnout. The weather was awesome. And we set the goal, original goal was set at 6,000, and we had to keep bumping it up. And there's still time to pay. The campaign goes on to the end of the month. It's not just seeing eye dogs they do, it's all service dogs are done through the Lions, whether it's autism or diabetes, alertness, or anything. So it's a wonderful program. It's great to see all the dogs out there and the people too. So it was a great event, and next year it'll be an anniversary, and I can't remember what number, but it's a milestone next year, so definitely have to get more people out. And just a quick shout out too, I went to Fight Fit on Saturday as well. Terry Fowler runs it there. It's a boxing fitness gym, and they had former Canadian featherweight boxing champion of the Commonwealth was there, and what a great guy to meet. And now I got to do some reading now, so that's about it. And everything, and the folk arts was great. And I'm going to steal a line from MPP Jenny Stevens. She kept saying at these events, in the month of May, where can you visit the world and not leave Niagara? And that's it, with 22 open houses and seeing all the cultures and the food and everything. So everybody get out there next year, and I will see you at those events.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Past week, I was able to attend the Niagara Regional Police Awards evening on your behalf. And it was a very impressive evening because quite often we think of police as a constable sitting in a police car. This evening was an evening where various police officers were given awards for their heroic work in their line of duty. We don't realize the vast amounts of duties that our police officers carry out, from homicides to forensics to trafficking to drugs, and it went on and on as to what some of these officers had done to make our community safer. But also they gave awards out to citizens who had been involved in acts of heroism. There was 4 golfers who heard of traffic accident and ran to the car and pulled the driver out of the car before the car burst into flames. Mary Uglini and I were sitting with a gentleman who was walking along the pier in Niagara, or in Port Dalhousie, and there's a 65-year-old gentleman who was floundering in the water, and this man and one other person jumped in the water. He didn't have any. There was no sign of life in his body when they got him onto the pier, but yet they saved him. And when EMS, thanks to EMS, were there and got him to a hospital, and as far as they know, he was still alive, but there was no signs, no vital signs when they got him. Another lady had talked a teenager off a bridge who was ready to commit suicide. These are the types of things that our police deal with, but it was a really, really great evening to hear about these things, and I think our residents need to hear more about them. Thank you. It was a very good evening.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. We'll go to Councillor Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to do a shout out to Grantham Lions, who this Friday night, May 30th, from 4 to 7 p.m. are having all-you-can-eat pasta night. The menu's spaghetti, homemade meatballs, salad, bread and dessert, coffee and tea, and it's all you can eat for $15, and that's an adult, and then kids are $10, cash bar, and you don't have to pre-book for that. It's just first come, first serve, and this is eat in or take out. So hopefully everybody will come out and support them. This is a great community event, and the money all raised goes back to the community. So please come out and join the Lions for a great night on Friday. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Dodge. Councillor Mako.
I'd like to thank everyone who attended the opening of the historic Lakeside Park Carousel last Saturday. It was a wonderful event. Just seeing it open for the first time and all the children and families smiling and so happy, it was a really special moment. I'd like to thank Councillor Phillips and Councillor Williamson for attending with me. It's not too often I ride a carousel with 2 adult men, but that was quite a fun time. It's usually my 2 young daughters, but we enjoyed it, and it was really nice to recognize the friends of the carousel who work so hard as the volunteer. Councillor McPherson, I think you were there a bit later in the day too, and then everyone can go all year round, of course, or all summer long, and enjoy that day. Also wanted to share that this Friday, our Port Dalhousie 200th Anniversary Committee is hosting a Spring Fling fundraiser at the Port Dalhousie Lions Club, and it's $10 a ticket if anyone would like to go, starting at 8 p.m., and we have a band playing, and all funds raised will support our Port Dalhousie 200th Planning Committee efforts to support the big events that we plan on hosting next year in 2026, which is the annual events. We're going to have a few fundraisers this year to help build some funding because we have no government funding and no grant funding, so we're trying to fundraise all of this for ourselves. That's all I had. Thank you.
All right, excellent. So I think that is the entirety of what we had this evening. Okay, so I'm going to apologize to folks in the gallery. My contacts are kind of phasing in and out. Did Ashley Miller just walk in? And were you to speak tonight? Sure. Okay, I just wanted to make sure so that we got you added to the agenda. So I think Councillor McPherson's going to have that motion. So we do have one additional speaker for item 9.1, moved by Councillor McPherson. Okay, so I will look to the clerk now for the adoption of the agenda.
The following amendments have been made to the agenda. Item 7.1, Public Meeting Recommendation Report regarding application to amend zoning bylaw 2013-283. Subject lands 2000 Pathstone Way was revised to reflect changes to the holding provision, which was previously stated as 15 under Schedule A, and it now reads various, and to correct an error to remove prior to, which now reads having jurisdiction over the relevant infrastructure. Item 10.2, motion regarding investigation of Pier docking passes for local residents will be discussed after item 9.1 as there's a registered delegate for item 10.2. And the following items of additional correspondence have been placed in Council Sugar Sync folder, will also be part of the Council correspondence listing for May 29th, which is found on the city's website. Correspondence from Dylan Earl from Maxima Holdings regarding demolition of 115 Main Street. Confidential memorandum from the Assistant City Solicitor. 2, regarding Ontario Land Tribunal Appeal, 31 Main Street. Correspondence from St. Catharines Public Library regarding the 2025 Impact Report. And confidential memorandum from the City Solicitor regarding status update, closing premises, public nuisance.
Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended? Councillor Townsend, Councillor Stevens, all those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. We have the council minutes, the minutes of May 12th. Can I have a motion to adopt? Councillor Lindell, Councillor Dodge, all those in favor? Opposed? And it's carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest this evening? Seeing none, we will move on to item 5, the motion to approve the consent agenda, save and accept those items being brought forward for discussion. Can I have a mover for that? Councillor Townsend. I will look to the clerk to read the list of consent reports, and then we can call the recorded vote.
Tonight's consent agenda includes item 6.1, Community Recreation and Culture Services, Recreation and Culture Programs, Special Events Fee Reduction Policy Amendments. Item 6.2, Financial Management Services, 2024 Development Charges, Treasurer's Statement and Development Charge Bylaw Extension. Item 6.3, Financial Management Services, Financial Planning, 2024 Community Benefits Charges Reserve Fund Statement. Item 6.4, Legal and Clerk Services, Office of the City Clerk, appointment of a hearing officer for all appeals under Bylaw 95-302, being a bylaw for the licensing and regulating and keeping of dogs. 6.5, Planning and Building Services, Planning Services, Heritage Permit Application for Demolition at 115 Main Street, Port Dalhousie Heritage Conservation District. Planning and Building Services, Planning Services, Downtown Heritage Conservation District Study. Approval of the recommendation will refer this report to council meeting of June 9th for consideration of the staff recommendation. And item 6.7, Legal and Clerk Services, Office of the City Clerk, Integrity Commissioner, response to complaint for Mayor Cisco. Councillor Townsend?
Yes.
Councillor Stevens?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Lindell?
Yes.
Councillor Mako?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
And Mayor Cisco.
Yes.
That's carried.
Our declaration to all presenters. Council chambers in all municipalities in our country represent the seat of local democracy. The many acts that govern us understand the necessity of the collective voice when decisions are being made to grow our spaces, pass our bylaws, and to seek opinions into very complex issues, ensuring safe spaces for all in our public discourse. We recognize the right of the majority to decide, the minority to be heard, the public to have an opportunity to participate, and all participants to be treated with courtesy and respect. It is imperative that elected officials, citizens, and staff have input, and it is paramount that we listen to one another and question one another, but that we understand we do this in a way that never undermines any person's ability or their dignity in our chambers. We respect the right for everyone to have an opinion and remind the audience views of the public do not always reflect those of the Corporation of the City of St. Catharines. So we'll move on first to 7.1, which is a public meeting. The Planning and Building Services, Planning Act Public Meeting Recommendation Report, application to amend zoning bylaw 2013-283, subject lands 2000 Pathstone Way and 1500 Pathstone Way, owner 4th Avenue Ventures, GP, Inc. The purpose of this public meeting is to ensure that sufficient information is available for the public and council to understand the proposed application to amend zoning bylaw 2013-283, subject lands 2000 Pathstone Way, and to provide the public with an opportunity for input before council's decision. If a specified person or public body is defined in the Planning Act, or the registered owner of the land does not make an oral submission at the public meeting, or written submission to council prior to council making its decision, they are not entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. If a person does not make an oral submission at the public meeting or a written submission prior to the council decision, that person may not be added as a party to the hearing of any appeals by others without the permission of the tribunal. The public meeting will proceed as follows. Staff will explain the application to amend zoning bylaw 2013-283, subject lands 2000 Pathstone Way. After that, the agent will speak and council will have an opportunity to ask questions. Members of the public wishing to delegate were advised to register by 9 a.m. today on this matter. One person requested to speak. The deadline to submit additional written comments not previously published on the council correspondence listing was 12 p.m. today, and no written comments were received. At that point, I will ask if anybody else in attendance wishes to speak on this matter. At that point, the public meeting will be closed, and council will be able to ask staff questions and will consider the motion to amend zoning bylaw 2013-283, subject lands 2000 Pathstone Way. The public meeting is now open, and I will call upon Claire Semple, the planner, to present.
Welcome, councillors, members of the public, and the mayor. My name is Claire Semple. I'm a planner with the City of St. Catharines, and this is a public meeting to consider the zoning bylaw amendment application for 1500 2000 Pathstone Way. This application requests to rezone the lands from business commercial employment, E1, to medium-density mixed-use, M1. It will also amend Special Provision 5 for various site-specific matters related to the lot, the building, setbacks, and landscape buffers, as well as the location of long-term and short-term parking, bicycle parking. Now, where are these properties? It is located in the West End, off of 4th Avenue and 3rd Street Louth, at the intersection of Pennachetti Way and Pathstone Way. These are two properties that are to merge to facilitate this development. For the purpose of this presentation, they will be considered as one property. Adjacent is the planned Extendicare long-term care facility, which is currently under construction. Across Pathstone Way is the Brancombe Center, Pathstone Mental Health, and the planned long-term care facility for Shanix. To the east is vacant land, and further east is the hospital served by the helipad. The proposal is two mixed-use buildings. Building A is a maximum height of 51 meters, 15 stories, with a 6-story podium. Building B is 6 stories with a maximum height of 23.5 meters. A total of 313 apartment units will be provided between the two buildings, with non-residential units provided at ground level for various commercial, office, and institutional uses. Surface parking is provided between two lots. One level of underground parking is also provided. A block of approximately 10% of the land has been set aside for a future parkland contribution, which will be conveyed to the city in accordance with the parkland bylaw through the site plan approval process. Now, moving on to the municipal policy framework which guides the land use on this site. The subject lands are designated in both its general designation and its district designation as mixed use. This area was redesignated as a result of Official Plan Amendment 26, or OPA 26, which was finalized in 2022, which redesignated this from business commercial employment to its current designation, mixed use. It is also subject to a special district policy, which sets out the development vision for not just this property, but the broader immediate area. It should be noted that the city has not yet implemented the zoning to match the official plan redesignation. As a result, the zoning does not match the official plan designation. It is currently zoned business commercial employment with special provision 5, E1-5. A broad array of employment uses are currently permitted, while Special Provision 5 establishes specific performance standards to achieve a campus-style development format. Staff recommend approving the applicant's request to rezone the subject lands to medium-density mixed-use, M1, and Special Provision 5 will remain with changes, and recommend implementing a holding provision 30, which will be discussed in greater detail in the next slides. Staff recommend approval of the changes to Special Provision 5 that permit the development concept proposed, except for the following items and modifications. The applicant has requested a parking ratio of 0.8 spaces per unit, per residential unit. Staff recommend maintaining the existing permission, parking permission of 1 unit per apartment unit, 1 space per apartment unit. The applicant is also proposing to accommodate long-term bicycle parking below grade in the underground parking garage. Staff are recommending that this be accommodated at grade. Currently, as illustrated in this drawing, the building is proposed to be set back 3 meters from Pathstone Way with a 2-meter landscape buffer. Staff are recommending that the building be further pushed back to 5 meters with a 3-meter landscape buffer, as it creates a more appropriate interface between the public realm and a consistent streetscape with adjacent properties. The applicant has also requested for permission to encroach onto 30 centimeters from the property line. As you can see, the encroachment is circled. Staff are not recommending this encroachment and seek that the balconies be redesigned to meet the building setback. Staff are also recommending a holding provision. The results of the sanitary flow analysis determined there's existing sewer capacity constraints identified in the city's modeling. Wet weather flow reductions and/or sewer upgrades may need to be completed. This holding provision will prevent the proposed zoning bylaw from taking in effect until such time that it can be demonstrated that sufficient wastewater capacity exists to accommodate the proposal. Notice of public meeting was mailed to adjacent property owners, signs posted on the property, and shared on the city's website. No comments were received from the public. The applications were circulated to all relevant departments and agencies. Notable comments received were from Transport Canada, Niagara Health, and Development Engineering. Development Engineering's comments have been addressed through the holding provision as discussed previously in this presentation. Notable site plan requirements from Canada National Railway and Niagara Region relates to the introduction of sensitive uses in proximity to regional roads, the helipad, and the railway. Staff, through the site plan approval process, will ensure noise and safety mitigation measures in accordance with guidelines. Niagara Health is the operator of the helipad, which transports critical patients in and out of the Murata Family Hospital. Transport Canada is responsible for the oversight of the helipad and its certification. Both raise concerns regarding the development's proximity to the helipad. Specifically, Transport Canada identified that the building lies within the helicopter departure arrival path, which may have operational and safety concerns and may affect the certification of the helipad. They also noted preliminary assessments suggest the proposed buildings may encroach upon the heliport's airspace. Niagara Health and Transport Canada have not provided the city with a survey or an illustration of the extent of the arrival and departure paths for which to guide staff's land use considerations. In the absence of this information, city staff have taken the diagram labeled ELEV 336 and overlaid that with an aerial imagery and a conceptual site plan for illustrative purposes only. Staff would note the building height and setbacks for Building B, being the 6-story building discussed by Transport Canada, are permitted as of right in the current zoning. No zoning relief is required for a 6-story building in the location proposed. Considering all available information, staff recommend council approve the amendment as outlined in the report, and that the zoning bylaw amendment outlined in staff's recommendation is consistent with provincial planning statement, conforms to and does not conflict with the Niagara official plan and the Garden City plan. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Semple, for your presentation. At this time, I will call upon Marcus Martins, Development Project Manager for Ambria Homes, to present. And there are other officials with the development team that are available if need be. Diego Canary, Principal Architect, Colin Dugan, the Civil Engineer, Kyle Hellewell, the Noise and Vibration Lead Engineer, as well as Janice Mora, the Transportation Analyst, who will be on Zoom in case of questions. Bit of a full court press.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council and members of the public. My name is Marcus Martins. I am a Development Project Manager from Ambria Homes, who is the applicant of this subject site. I'm joined here by Diego, who is our Principal Architect from KFA Architecture, joined by Colin, our Civil Engineer from S. Welland, and Kyle as well from RWDI, who is our Lead Acoustical Engineer. And we're also joined virtually by Janice, who's from Nextrans, who is our transportation expert. I have nothing further to add to this presentation. I just want to thank Claire and Scott for the exceptional work that they've been done in the support for this application. And we do concur with the staff's recommendation. We also agree with the proposed changes to the provisions. So we just wanted to make ourselves available to answer any questions that the council or the mayor may have, or the public as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, thanks for coming here today to answer questions. I mean, the big one right off the bat is the helicopter access. And I understand you brought a transportation expert with you. I'm just wondering, you know, with Transport Canada, could they get involved and stop this application from moving forward? Would it risk the hospital from losing the helicopter access? Because we can't afford to lose helicopter access.
Yeah, most definitely. Through the chair. So we actually retained WSP, who's an aeronautical engineer, and they're actually looking into the flight path. They prepared a report and submitted the report to us today, which analyzed the flight path in the vicinity of the proposed development. And they concluded that it won't obstruct with their flight path, and they have sufficient clearance to actually safely land the helicopter. We do also have RWDI looking at the noise considerations for the heliport as well, which we're going to be exploring, as Claire mentioned, through the site plan process. But we're going through all the applications that Transport Canada requires from us through the site plan process.
Thank you for that. And through you, Mr. Mayor, my other question is, can you maybe just, what have your conversations with Transport Canada been? I know there's a new Minister of Transport. Do you plan on having conversations with that minister to talk about, so maybe you can just kind of talk a little bit about that?
So unfortunately, we were able to connect with Transport Canada. These were comments that came through the municipality, City St. Catharines, but we are going to be open to have those discussions with the minister and also work through those comments in the site plan process with the city as well. So we'll actively engage with Transport Canada. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. Councillor Phillips.
I'll ask my usual question. When do you figure that your project will be completed?
Depending on the market.
Yeah, that's the normal response.
Yeah, it's all dependent on the markets. I mean, we're hoping to, eventually after this recommendation, we have to go through our site plan process and then, again, depending on the market and how the sales program goes, it could be within 4 or 5 years, I would assume, but it's all dependent on the market. I can't.
So as soon as you have clearance from our planning department and everything, are you going to get started right away?
Depending on the sales. If we have enough sales, we'll definitely launch the construction of the project, yeah.
Sounds familiar. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you. My concerns more relate to ground transportation, particularly the CN rail line that runs just to the south of the property. And we've got looking towards more frequent GO trains and hopefully keeping our VIA trains running, and there's talk of more high-speed rail. And if they're actually going to be faster and safer, we're going to need to eliminate the grade crossings at Van Sickle, 1st Street, 3rd Street, 7th Street, et cetera, down the way. And another thing that will do is hopefully not having the horns blaring, which future residents would probably prefer not to be woken up all the time by the train. So, and I do note in the report that CN has some sort of cautionary comments in here. I just wondered, is there space in the railway right-of-way or easement for them to do the work to make these transitions to take out the at-grade crossings, and have there been any discussions with CN or Metrolinx?
Through the mayor, for that question, sorry, was it the crossing of?
Well, they're eventually going to have to probably, there's going to be some significant works done, either underpasses and overpasses. Do they have the width in the railway corridor to do it, or are they going to need more land at those intersections? And has that been taken into consideration? That might be more questions to our staff too, but be interested if that has been considered.
Yeah, through the mayor, I don't think those concerns were brought up through this application. The only concerns that CN Rail really brought up were the noise impacting the vibration, which we're implementing some berm features on the southern side of the site with recommendation of having a 1.8 meter tall chain link fence to prevent people from accessing the rail line for the proposed development. But in terms of the crossing, that wasn't brought up through the application, and it wasn't brought up as a comment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to the presenters. I know throughout the province, when they developments are near airports, before you sell units, the potential buyers are notified that there is an airport nearby. So would you be doing the same thing, saying, listen, there is a train and there is a helipad, so it's nothing like, oh my God, I didn't know. So that's part of the whole sales thing, that these people know that, so they're aware and there's no complaints, more or less, type of thing, right? And you guys do that kind of thing?
So through the mayor, we're going to include those clauses into the agreement of purchase and sale with the future residents, taking into consideration the rail line and also the heliport, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Seeing no other questions or comments, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you very much.
At this time, and prior to discussing the report, we will hear a delegation from Mary Jane Johnson. Ms. Johnson, the lectern is yours.
Mr. Mayor, councillors, city staff, nice to see some familiar faces today. I'm here with Patrick Raymond, Facilities Manager from Niagara Health, and we are obviously speaking on behalf of Niagara Health. I think there's probably no surprise why we're here. So as you have noted and how city staff have noted, we operate a dedicated helicopter landing pad at the Murata Family Hospital. We rely on the helicopter pad for the transport of our critically ill and patients by air ambulance. As noted in the report, and here today, it's in the current located in terms of the flight path. So again, needed for that critical pathway. We want to just say that we appreciate all the work of the City of St. Catharines staff in working with us in terms of highlighting our concerns, in terms of where it is and also bringing those concerns to the developer as well. We also understand that there's, as noted, WSP has been consulted in terms of being engaged, and we've learned some new things today too. So essentially what we're asking council is, again, our request is to ensure that the helipad operations and the safety of our patients is carefully considered before any planning approvals on this development. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Johnson. Are there any questions? All right, seeing none, thank you for the presentation. At this time, does anyone else in attendance wish to speak on the matter of 2000 Pathstone Way? All right, seeing none, can I have a motion to close the public meeting? Councillor Harris, Councillor Phillips, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Public meeting is now closed and council is called to order. Persons wishing to receive notice of council's decision should submit a written request to the office of the city clerk. Is there a councillor who would like to move the recommendation in the report? Councillor Harris. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Stevens. We'll go with Councillor Stevens. So the recommendation is on the screen. We'll now look for questions or comments. This is also your opportunity to ask staff questions. So any questions or comments related to this report, this is also the time to make the comment. Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, my question is, I guess, to planning. Obviously, the helicopter access is a concern. Is there something that we need to put in here to ensure that the helicopter access will not be impacted? My concerns here is just when I did sit on the airport commission, there was rules around heights with buildings within any of the airport path. My concern here is that Transport Canada could come in and shut down the helicopter access. I'm just wondering if staff can comment on that.
Through the mayor to the councillor, I will address two of your points before. So this helipad is not considered an airport under the provincial policy statement. It also does not enjoy airport zoning that the Niagara Airport enjoys. That being said, the current as of right permissions would permit a building to be located where it is proposed.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to planning staff, from what I understand, the height limit of 15, though, is a concern, and Transport Canada hasn't commented yet on it because they've kind of taken the step back. My concern here is if we approve this, is there a chance Transport Canada can come forward and say, actually, we're going to rescind this approval? Is that something, because it has happened with the airport. I know these are two different, but Transport Canada does have that ability to do so.
Through the mayor to the councillor, Transport Canada, in their comments, have not issued any approval. They have simply made available information. They are the oversee, but they also provide the certification. Transport Canada identified that it is the 6-story building that would be in the arrival and departure path.
Okay, thank you. I'll just make my comments now, Mr. Mayor, as well. As much as I do want to see more housing, I don't feel comfortable supporting this, knowing that that height limit could impact the helicopter path. That height, I know, I'm sure Councillor Stevens could, now as he's on the commission of the airport, Transport Canada, they can come in and shut down a development like this. So I won't be supporting this. I'm really concerned about the height limits, and I don't want to risk the hospital having to lose their access for the helipad. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to city planning. You heard my questions to the proponents in regard to CN Rail, and I do note some concerns in here. Have the measures that have been taken, are they sufficient enough to mitigate those concerns? And I know this property isn't at an intersection, but I guess we'd have to be concerned about that for future potential developments.
Through the mayor to the councillor, mitigation measures and studies through noise and vibration studies, it will occur through the site plan approval process in partnership with CN and Metrolinx, which was also circulated. So that will be addressed in detail through the site design and through potential warning clauses in the site plan agreement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Councillor Harris.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Director of Planning. I'm just wondering, is there any sort of language we can put in this to ensure that the helipad is not jeopardized?
Through the mayor to the councillor, I think just to highlight something that Claire mentioned a couple times is the application is not seeking any additional height related to the 6-story building, Building B. That height is already permitted. They could pull a site plan agreement tomorrow without any approval from this council for a 6-story building in the precise location where it's being proposed. So I did want to highlight that additional height in that location is not something that's being requested tonight. That being said, through the site plan approval process, we will of course it's appropriate to do it at that time because then we have more information about rooftop mechanical equipment, the type of things that might be on the roof, the final ceiling heights. At that point, we'll be able to confirm and make sure we coordinate with Transport Canada and the hospital to just make sure there is not a conflict with the approach path. So I would suggest to council that is something staff will be doing through the site plan approval process, regardless of whether or not the motion is amended.
Okay, so just so I'm clear through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Manager of Planning Services, right now we're just approving the zoning. When it comes back to site plan, you'll keep in mind the helipad and ensure that it's not disrupted. How's that?
Through the mayor to the councillor, yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I'm just repeating what Councillor Townsend and Harris said was, we need development, we need housing, so it's definitely needed, but we cannot give up the right of way for a helipad. I mean, if someone needs that ambulance, that's priority over building a house, obviously. So I think we just got that clarification then. So we approve this tonight, that's great. In the site development stages, if someone comes back from Transport Canada, that's where there can be adjustments made in order to keep our heliport. Is that correct? All right, thank you.
For those at home, the Manager of Planning nodded in agreement. Yes, that was the case. Councillor Dodge.
Not to keep asking the same question, but mine is more long-term, like I lived close to the railroad tracks when I first bought my first house, and you think that it's great, and then you start hearing the train and the whistles and the vibrations and stuff, and then it doesn't, really jive with what your living thing is. So what happens once they build the building and then people are like 330 apartments are filled with people and they start to say, you know what, I can't deal with, 24 hours a day, the helicopter coming in and out. Like, is there anything that could happen later that would, say, okay, you know what, we're getting a lot of complaints from the residents. We're not going to allow this to happen here anymore.
Through the mayor to the councillor, are you talking after that the units have been fulfilled?
Mm-hmm.
So there will be clauses in the site plan agreement and requirements through the site plan agreement for the developer to include certain information in purchase and sales. So they will be informed when making those decisions. That being said, there will be every effort to to implement noise mitigation measures through the built form.
I might also add through the mayor to the councillor that the proposed development also does maintain a standard 30-meter setback. So there's something that CN looks for on any proposal to add sensitive uses like housing in proximity to one of their main lines. And this project is achieving that 30-meter separation. So no units will be closer than 30 meters to the rail property. Then there's some additional distance between the rail property and the actual rail line. And then in that space between the building and the rail line property, they're also going to be constructing a berm, which will help with the noise mitigation as well, in addition to the construction methods that they'll be required to implement.
Okay, so that's great, and I'm really happy that we're doing a buyer beware type approach to this development. But what I'm asking is, like, say in 5 years from now, can the residents come forward and say, you know what, we bought this property here, and that helipad is just very difficult to live by? Is there anything that, you know, like, can they do that then? So once it's built, there's nothing they can do to make the helipad go away?
Through the mayor to the councillor, through the site plan process, we will be asking for a noise study that identifies noise impacts from the helipad and from the CN lines, and identifies mitigation measures that must be taken at time of construction to prevent these things from coming. Furthermore, we've heard agreement and commitment from the applicants as well to put clauses on purchase and sale agreements to advise people of what amenities are in the area. Moving forward after that, should people move in and not be, perhaps be inconvenienced by these other amenities, at that point, it's up to their own, it's honestly buyer beware at that point. The facilities predated the application.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dodge. Seeing no other questions or comments, at this time, I will look to the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Councillor Stevens? Councillor Ratzlaff?
Yes.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Mako?
Yes.
Councillor Lindell?
Yes.
Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Townsend?
No.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
And Mayor Cisco?
Yes.
That's carried.
All right, moving on. Item 8, presentations. There are none. So we will move on to item 9, discussion reports, and we'll begin with 9.1. Office of the Chief Administrative Officer, staff business case, resources required to enforce the public space bylaw. Prior to discussing the report, I will call upon Aaron Ohosky, the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, for introductory comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Council, I wanted to provide a quick synopsis and chronology over where we're at in the public space bylaw reporting process, as well as draw your attention to some key highlights within the report that I just wanted to make sure aren't missed, so that will allow you to make an informed decision this evening. So you recall at the April 29th council meeting, council did approve a public space bylaw, directed staff to do a number of...
I'm going to pause you right there. Folks, there aren't outbursts from the crowd. If there are outbursts, we'll remove the individuals that we need to remove. If it's a lot of outbursts, we'll clear the gallery. Okay? This is the only time I'm going to be making that comment. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to members of council. So on April 29th, council approved a public space bylaw. The link to that report is in your report this evening, as well as the series of motions and amendments that council made to the staff recommendation. Some of those are in the report, as well as there was a number of them, so those are also linked for your information. One of the key operative clauses in that council direction was to expedite a business case to advise council of the resources that would be required to implement this bylaw. The council motion indicated that for 2025, resources would be at the discretion of the CAO from the tax rate stabilization reserve, and that this business case would be required, which is in this report this evening, within the report for the inclusion in the 2026 reconfirmation budget process. The resources that are required to implement a bylaw of this scale are located on page 4 of 6 of your report. So just for your information, for a full year of operations, we have an operating impact of about $699,000 for 2026 and a capital impact of $215,000. I will note that there is a $120,000 amount for contract services. That is a bit of a flexibility if we notice over time that the resource requirements for encampment cleanup and enforcement are reduced. That's a flexible contingency that we can reduce over time should that no longer be necessary. I also wanted to draw your attention to the business case itself, which is attached as Appendix 1 to the report. Based on Council's directions when we were developing the bylaw to look at models that are in place in communities like Guelph and Oshawa, we did a careful examination of the resource allocations in those municipalities. That's in the business case itself for your information. You'll see in every resource category, even with the new proposed resources, we're still significantly less than those other municipalities who've pursued similar models. I will note that these resources are required for successful implementation of the bylaw. Staff have suggested that if Council's not comfortable with the resources outlined in this business case, our recommendation in this report is that the bylaw would be repealed because we would not be able to enforce it. So one other thing I wanted to highlight for Council's consideration, we've received a lot of questions in terms of what the process would look like for Class 1 and Class 2 areas. That's been included as Appendix 3 to the report itself. There's a flow chart, and you can see how that process would flow in the implementation, whether it's a Class 1 or a Class 2 area. So that's included for your information, including points at the appropriate parts of when outreach services and examination of available shelter spaces would be pursued with our partners who are in the jurisdiction of providing those services. That is just the key points I wanted to highlight, Mayor, and that's it for me.
Thank you to Deputy CAO. We will now hear our delegations. We have 2 of them. As a reminder for everybody in the audience, there is no clapping, there is no cheering, there is no loud agreements with or against the presenters. We try to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to have their say without any intimidation or frustration. So with that, we will now hear a delegation from Saleh Waziruddin.
Hi, Mayor and Councillors. I'm Saleh Waziruddin, as the Mayor said. One obvious problem with the business case, as you already heard, is that we have 4 to 5 times the active encampments as Guelph and a bigger area from Appendix 1 of the report. But the same staffing is being proposed, possibly less. We've seen from the news that encampments just pop up again a few days later or somewhere else. But unhoused people's situation is even worse the next time around, so cleanup costs will probably be even higher. But even taking what's proposed in the report, some of the costs are one-time, but others are ongoing, even if you're just going to take them out once from the tax stabilization reserve. Annual licensing fees, obviously not one time, and other costs are going to be rolled over into the next budget as ongoing operating costs. The province's handbook for councillors, and that's you, calls the tax rate stabilization reserve, quote, reserves to help address changes in tax revenue, end quote. They're not for operating expenses. And if that sounds familiar, it should, because last year, the late Councillor Garcia had a budget amendment to take over $225,000 for the operating budget from this reserve, and staff said, quote, does not meet these criteria, end quote. Staff explained last year, quote, this reserve has been used for non-recurring or one-time expenses, end quote. If it was a bad idea in 2024, it's still a bad idea in 2025. Last year's staff report also pointed out 62% of this reserve is already committed, and more has been spent since then. So the business case in front of you tonight will take out more than 20% of this reserve, almost half for the multi-year period. And if you spend proportionally to what Guelph spends per encampment, you would almost wipe out this reserve. That means when a truly one-off unforeseen event happens, you won't have that cushion to spread out the effect on tax rates. So what should you do if we can't pay for what's in the business case, or 4 to 5 times that? My absolute favorite line in the staff report, quote, if council chooses not to approve the business case, Staff recommends that the bylaw be repealed, end quote. If you can't pay to make it real, then you must repeal. There are other problems with the business case that are more important than money. Appendix 3 of the report says, quote, shelter space availability not applicable, end quote, for class 2 areas where people aren't allowed to set up encampments at all. This is staff's flowchart of the bylaw response and enforcement process. This goes against what you passed on the 29th because section 7.7, which is for all parts of the city, says, quote, no order requiring the removal of a building, structure, improvement, or the vacating of a location shall be issued under this bylaw unless the city has first confirmed, either directly or in coordination with its housing partners, that supported accommodation space is available. There's an exception for emergencies, but your own bylaw says you have to check for shelter availability. And your debate on the 29th shows that you know there are legal reasons why you have to do this. This business case throws that out the window. Then when you go further down the flow chart to what happens if there's a violation anywhere in the city, class 1 or class 2, it says call the police and go for, quote, enforcement. That's not my word, it's from the report in front of you, which says, quote, parties that obstruct may be prosecuted and could be subject to being arrested. This could include those who are encouraging non-compliance, end quote. Arrest means criminalization. It means handcuffs and jail, not fines and tickets. This is not an exaggeration. Ontario jails have such a bad reputation that a Scottish court is considering not extraditing people here for murder because it would be a human rights violation to be in an Ontario jail. Quote, encouraging non-compliance, end quote, is so vague, people supporting the unhoused with just food feel targeted. Many are holding back because they're afraid. That doesn't mean more compliance, it means more fear and also more resistance, which is not the result you're looking for. This is unnecessary. Arrests and going after those who are supporting, quote, encouraging, end quote, the unhoused should also be taken off. Lastly, the report says one of the key communication messages is, quote, the bylaw aims to regulate, not ban. Regulation means how tall your tent can be or how many anchors it needs. Just because a ban is not a blanket ban doesn't mean it's not a ban. The definition for class 2, which is a lot of the city where most encampments probably are, says, quote, person must not engage in any of the following activities, erect or cause to be erected or occupy any temporary structure or shelter. Must not engage is a ban by any other name. With this messaging, you're saying things that are not true. The city should not be telling lies. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wazirudin. Are there any questions or comments from councillors? All right, seeing none, thank you for the presentation. I'll now call upon Ashley Miller to speak. Ms. Miller, right up here. And the lectern is yours.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to gather today and for your commitment to the well-being of our public spaces and children. As parents, caregivers, educators, and community members, we all understand that childhood is a time of exploration, imagination, and innocence. As the warmth of summer approaches, our public parks and playgrounds will once again be filled with the joyful sounds of children playing, riding their bikes, splashing, and chasing one another under the sun. These spaces are meant to be safe havens where families and children can where families can gather and kids can simply be kids. But far too often, this sense of safety is compromised. We're finding that these spaces are not always as safe as they should be, but not just physically, but emotionally and psychologically as well. These spaces where we have little control and where accountability seems to vanish. It is becoming all too common to hear about children stumbling across discarded needles, paraphernalia, broken glass, vulgar signs, graffiti, or even inappropriate conversations and behaviors from others in these public spaces. It means educating our children in age-appropriate ways about what to do if they see something or someone dangerous and concerning, in what should be a family-friendly area. These are not just quality of life issues, these are matters of child endangerment. We must ask ourselves, if these are things we would not allow our children to be exposed to within the walls of our homes, why are they being exposed to them in public? When public spaces become a scene of open crime, indecency, and no action is taken, we're failing our children and we're failing our community. So I call upon authorities, law enforcement, city officials to step up, enforce the laws to reflect the value we place on children's safety, ensure the visible presence in our parks, enforce existing laws meant to protect the vulnerable, and to pursue charges when appropriate, not to punish for the sake of punishment, but to uphold a basic standard that the children should not be witnesses to criminal acts nor collateral damage in public negligence. This is not about over-policing, it's about responsible oversight. It's about sending a clear message. Our children deserve to grow up seeing kindness, not chaos, safety, not fear. We all share this responsibility as a community, as leaders, as parents, and as human beings. Let's restore our parks and playgrounds to places of peace, play, and protection. Let's do better because our children are watching, learning, and growing in these environments daily. As a community, take the steps to protect the innocent and the innocence of play and the magic of childhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Are there any questions? All right, seeing none, thank you for the presentation. Can I have a mover and a seconder to receive the delegations? I've got Councillor McPherson, Councillor Dodge, all those in favor? That's carried. Can I get a councillor to move the recommendation in the report? Councillor Phillips, seconded by Councillor McPherson. Any questions or comments to the report? Councillor Ratzlaff.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Through you, I just a comment and yeah, maybe a motion at the end, but I just wanted to express a frustration around this idea that, you know, we're put into a position where we're contemplating spending a lot of money on moving encampments around the city. We all know that this isn't going to fix the problem. This isn't going to address the root causes of encampments. You need more supportive housing. Niagara needs more supportive housing in order to do that. It's not going to reduce human suffering. It's just going to push the problem around, and it's going to cost us a lot to do that. Supportive housing is what we need. If we had adequate supportive housing, we wouldn't be contemplating spending close to $1 million the first year, and $600,000 to $700,000 moving forward, maybe more than that. For better or worse, or sorry, that's the first frustration that I have. I think we all share that frustration. The second frustration is around those who do have the tools to help, the tools to create supportive housing, but aren't. For better or worse, it is the region's responsibility to build supportive housing. Instead of stepping up, we've read in the paper and we've seen regional council decide to push to have a cap put on their property tax increase. That cap is in the name of taxpayer affordability. To be clear, capping tax increase at the region at 3.5%, as they're currently discussing, or what they'd like to see happen, won't create more supportive housing. We will see encampments get worse. And to rub salt in the wound, that spending cap won't save tax dollars a dime, right? Every dollar that they save not building supportive housing is a dollar we're spending at the city to move people around in encampments. If we don't invest in supportive housing, we'll be stuck spending money on this unending cycle of harm. Constantly moving encampments, constantly failing the vulnerable, and constantly wasting public money. So this motion probably won't be friendly, but I'd like to put a motion forward that instead of spending this money on encampment cleanup, we give it to the region, ask them to match it, and spend it on diversion, so moving people from encampments to housing and supportive housing. And if that motion fails...
Folks, I've made the comment once, I'll make it again. There's no outbursts, there's no clapping, and if there is, we're going to remove people from the gallery. Thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, I suspect that motion won't go far, and I understand reasons why. But, you know, if it doesn't, I'd like to request that included in this approval of the recommendation, that we request the mayor write a letter to regional council making it clear that if we care about taxpayers, we need to build supportive housing. It's cheaper than criminalizing, it's cheaper than encampment sweeps, and it's the right thing to do. You don't have to use that wording, but, you know.
Okay, so I'm looking at the mover. Is this friendly? No. So we will now clear the queue. Councillor Miller, I have you as up next to speak when we come back to the main amendment. We are now taking speakers to the amendment. If there are no speakers, we will vote on the amendment. It's that the amendment is that the money be not be used to deal with the public space use bylaw, but instead be used on diversion efforts in conjunction with the region if they spend a matching amount. Is that correct? Okay. Any questions or comments on the amendment? Is there a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Miller? Right.
Should I turn mine off?
Oh, sorry, actually, I guess this has to be a recorded vote. So I'm just going to turn you off, Councillor, so I can go to voting mode. Alexia, can you just put it on the board? This is the first vote, yes. Councillor Lindell, I need you to turn your mic off.
Can I ask a quick question first of Councillor Ratzlaff?
Of a question
For
of
his
clarification.
amendment?
Yes,
Yeah.
I mean, so can you turn your mic off for just a second? Okay. Let me turn off voting mode. And then we'll go through this. If this is the time for questions and comments with respect to the amendment, so that is totally fine. All right, so Councillor, do you want to push the button? And you're up.
Just a question, Councillor, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Ratzlaff. What happens if we send this to the region and they say no? Do we go back to our original recommendation?
Can we open up Councillor Ratzlaff? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. That's fine.
So I believe what Councillor Ratzlaff is saying is that, yes, if the region denied the request, then we could go back and spend the $700,000 on the public space use bylaw.
Well, I mean, we would have to vote on it again, would we not?
Oh, so we would do this all over again?
Come to us again?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so no. The answer is, thank you. I have Councillor Dodge up next.
Oh. So my question is, I thought that the mayor write the letter to the regional council, I thought that was a separate motion, or is it all part of the first motion? Yeah, can you split that then? And then also, don't know whether the mover would consider this friendly, but I think that we should push this even further by asking the province as well as the federal government for any help that they could give us in this matter.
So is that friendly to your amendment? Can we open up Councillor Ratzlaff again?
Yeah, that's fine. I just think it's important that regional council understand that, you know, when supportive housing isn't built, it doesn't mean that we're saving taxpayer money. It just means we're spending it differently in ways that don't actually address the root cause of the problem.
Okay. Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I just wanted, can we change the to the second part, the first part there, the mayor, regional councillor to build supportive housing. Can you make it more specific to Minister Greg Robertson, who's the new Minister of Housing federally, and then Minister Rod Flack from the province, just to be more specific. My other question is with the 700,000, yeah, my concern is we give the money to the region who's responsible for housing, and they just say thank you, and then they don't spend it. this is like, and look, I love the concept, I agree. I think everyone here around this chamber agrees. We need more supportive housing. We need way more. It's regional responsibility, it's provincial, it's federal, and yes, we can continue to put more and more pressure on those higher levels of government. But gifting already like this taxpayer money to the region, I don't think it's the right move. We need to put more pressure on other levels of government. Everyone around this chamber agrees. You need way more supportive housing. You need more mental health hospitals. We know this. And I'm supportive of the mayor continuing to advocate like we do every year at FCM, at AMO with these ministers. And we do that, and it's not like we're not doing that, because we are. Every single year, we have these meetings. So I'm not gonna vote in favor of gifting the region $700,000 for them to decide how they wanna misspend it or spend it, or not spend it and just take it. So yes, I agree with more supportive housing. Everyone in this chamber, everyone in here agrees with that. So my vote against the money, sending it to the region is specific to, I can't trust that money being spent where it belongs. But I will give my word, and I'm not speaking for everyone, but I will continue to advocate more supportive housing. We're in Ottawa this week. We're meeting with FCM leaders. The new Prime Minister will be there. The new Minister of Housing will be there. The minister is, it's a new housing minister, Greg Robertson, and when we do see him, we will meet with him, and we will tell him that the federal government needs to do their job and give municipalities money to help deal with this issue, because it's a crisis. So that's my thoughts, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know that I can be more eloquent than my colleague. But along the same lines as, yes, we all want more supportive housing. I don't see how giving the region money would achieve anything, because they've had the money, they've had the opportunity. I think at this point, I would like to, ask the money back from the region for, for the work that the city is doing and the things that the city is dealing with. I mean, it would be nice, we've been sitting around the table with regional councillors and regional staff for over a year on the downtown well-being and safety committee. And we hear things from the region of, we're doing this, we're doing that. But there is, at this point, there's no accountability. We don't know what the region is doing. At times, we can't even get the right numbers for how many people are restricted from shelters, which is part of what's happening with the encampment situation, is there are people who are unfortunately restricted who can't go into shelter and are now living in encampments. We can't even get the right numbers from the region half the time. So as much as I want more supportive housing, and I would love to see the region work with other organizations like, I will say it, like Indwell, who do a great job. I would love the region to work with other supportive housing providers. But I unfortunately I can't support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson. Councillor Miller.
Yeah, I'll just point out that probably the most obvious success we've had in addressing homelessness and chronic poverty has been when we did hand over assets to the region by letting them build a shelter on what was city land. So, I don't know that this idea that we're just foisting it over and hoping for the best, that we've achieved success when we have partnered with the region. And I think it's a travesty that they and the province are not spending money on this issue, and I've said that pretty consistently for a long time. But I think when we have given them the money, which is not the way it's supposed to go, they have, or in that case, assets, they have addressed the issue. And I'll just point out, I know I said this last time, AMO, the Association of Municipalities themselves, say the goal of public spaces bylaw must be to get people into housing. I do not see how our bylaw is currently constructed and as it's being proposed to enforce does that. It's just going to spend public money to accelerate a cycle of misery that people are in because they'll have their home removed and then they'll have to come back and set up again or set up somewhere else. So I would rather spend that money to actually provide some supportive housing units than to just throw that money at, again, accelerating the problem. So that's why I'm fine to support this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Can we move the staff up underneath where it says the two ministers as well? So like it's great that Councillor Townsend said to address the two ministers, but I'd also like the rest of their cabinet to have the same message go to them. So can we move that, because it's underneath the first vote, I want it to be with the rest of it. After housing. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so so the movers of the original motion are saying that is friendly, so that's fine. That can be a part of the original motion. Okay, are there any other questions or comments? Councillor Townsend?
It's just the name of, it's Greg Robertson. Thank you.
Robertson, yeah, sorry, I didn't catch that. Are there any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none before we get to the vote, I will just say a couple things because this was pointed out. There was a motion at Regional Council on Thursday night. It started out as a cap on property taxes. It morphed over the course of the evening through some amendments by myself and others into guidance, and staff will return back to allow everybody to see what 3.5% looks like. There's pretty broad agreement around the Regional Council table that 3.5% is not reasonable, and that's why I asked for an appendix to be brought forward identifying exactly what the cuts would have to be to get down to 3.5%, because frankly, when the rubber hits the road, I don't think Regional Council is going to be willing to sacrifice all the things that they actually have to sacrifice to get to 3.5%. I don't think it's a reasonable number. I will say, with respect to the idea of moving the money in the business case over to the region for diversion efforts, we've been down this road. We actually made a decision earlier this year in the $350,000 we had allocated, and some of which was going to support Nassau. We made the decision to rehome that money here because the cleanup costs continue to escalate. This amendment, I mean, it's asking to double down on something that hasn't worked. And the reality is the costs associated with all of this will still exist. And this is something I'll get to in the main motion, but the reality is the cost to clean up encampments continue to go up. The bylaw as it stands and the money that would be associated with the bylaw, if we pass the staff recommendation this evening, would help alleviate that pressure. If we don't pass that, that pressure doesn't go away. It just turns into pulling from other areas and probably a budget amendment at the end of this year for the 2026 budget, because the money will still be needed. I will also point out, and it was raised, the reality is that this level of government, and as I like to point out on a regular basis, the one level of government that doesn't actually have this responsibility, this is not a part of our mandate. We got a report last year that said between June of 23 and June of 24, we spent $9.31 million on homelessness-related downstream issues. So anybody who says that this level of government is not spending money, we most definitely are. And I will get more to comments around this in a moment when we get back to the main motion. But I would implore my colleagues to not vote for this, because I think we've tried this and it hasn't worked. I do have Councillor Phillips wanting to add something.
Just a question to you, Mr. Mayor. In the report, it's mentioned that you researched with the Mayor of Guelph and the Mayor of Oshawa. What were their responses in what they've done? Have they noticed an improvement?
So, and the Mayor of Oshawa has been very helpful. He's met with staff. His senior staff have met with our staff to talk about how to get a handle on this. They're in a very similar situation, and that's why Oshawa is probably a better comparator in this respect. They're a lower tier municipality in the region of Durham, and they took us through their process to force some accountability on the region and to make sure that appropriate housing was being built. And they've experienced, to hear him tell it, significantly more success than we are experiencing. In Guelph, it's still early days. They brought about a public space use bylaw in the fall, and so in my conversations with Mayor Guthrie, they have not had problems. It has been relatively smooth, and the clear delineation of where people couldn't be, those restricted areas, made it very clear cut for individuals who were looking to set up an encampment where they could be. which I think was the intent of our bylaw as well. So it's early days there, but the more direct comparator in Oshawa has experienced success and also experienced success in forcing the issue at the regional level of government.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll look to the clerk to call the roll on the amendment. So we're voting on the first vote at the bottom of the screen that the money be diverted. So if you are in favor of that, you vote yes, and if you don't want to see the money diverted, you vote no.
Councillor Ratzlaff,
Yes.
Councillor Miller,
Yes.
Councillor Mako,
No.
Councillor Harris,
No.
Councillor Dodge,
No.
Councillor Lindell,
No.
Councillor McPherson,
No.
Councillor Phillips,
No.
Councillor Stevens,
No.
Councillor Townsend,
No.
Councillor Williamson,
No.
Mayor Cisco.
No.
That's lost.
Right. So Councillor Miller, you were next in the lineup.
Okay. I will try to be clearer this time about what are questions and what are comments, so I don't say too much. So 3 questions I have is, could staff respond? Mr. Wazirudin brought up the use of the tax rate stabilization reserve and maybe some inconsistencies there. So could we get why we think it's appropriate to use for operational expenses right now?
Through the mayor, so I'll defer to our Director of Financial Management Services for our policies on the use. In terms of the tax rate stabilization reserve funding for 2025, just for reference, that was something council directed staff to do and was approved at the April 29th meeting for resourcing associated with the 2025 dollars. So just so council is aware, it's not something that staff is bringing forward for consideration tonight. It's just a reiteration of the direction council provided on April 29th. That said, I'll defer to Director Douglas on our policies surrounding that particular reserve.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. With regards to the approved usage of the tax rate stabilization reserve, there are 3 different types of categories. It can go through the annual operating budget. It can be an unforeseen expenditure that may occur, or an unbudgeted or new expenditure. And at all times, council does have the ability to determine to use funds from any of the city's discretionary reserves.
Okay, thank you for that. And next question is, looking at the comparators, and Guelph and Oshawa brought up, I'm just curious why we chose these comparators. I'm noting Guelph, for example, has about 11 active encampments, which is about a quarter or potentially a fifth of as many as St. Catharines says they have. And Oshawa says they have none, and maybe that's the results of some sort of program, but I'm just curious why we chose these comparators. And then our response seems commensurate with their numbers, whereas our actual encampments are, 400% higher than theirs are. So I'm just curious what the thinking was there.
Through the mayor to Councillor Miller, the reason we chose these particular comparators is because council's direction, or the mayor's directive to prepare the bylaw, was asking us to base the bylaw on these communities as well as policies in Ottawa. So that because these communities have gone down this path with public space bylaw, those were the communities that we needed to rely on to better understand their resourcing model. There is some hope as we were doing the research that if the programs are effective, then perhaps our numbers will decrease as well, which is why we put in that buffer for flexibility of $120,000. Which is kind of the flex amount that we can scale down, or depending on the monitoring reports that council has requested, scale up over time. But that's the rationale.
Yeah, and I think my concern is that we would have to, I think I've been pretty clear, I'm not really in favor of this bylaw, but I mean, the enforcement we're really not setting up for success if we're have 2 bylaw officers dedicated to this, and so does Guelph, whereas they have 11 encampments, mostly on private property, and we have 43 on city property alone. So I'm just envisioning this number ballooning year over year, and I'm just not, I guess, I'm not satisfied that that's a good use of public money. I think it's a huge amount of money right now for something that isn't going to get anyone into housing. And I'll just say, you know, again, I'm not going to reiterate everything I said last time. I think the idea of having a public spaces bylaw is a good idea. I think it is necessary. I take my kids to parks as well. I would like to enjoy them, and we do, for the most part, enjoy them. What we don't really enjoy seeing is someone's home being destroyed and them not being offered any alternatives. And I just envision that's what my children will be seeing for the next 15 years in this community due to this bylaw. So, you know, I can't support it. I would love to see us repeal it and start again. Again, one of, you know, other than the nuts and bolts and specifics of this bylaw, one of my biggest issues is the lack of consultation we had, specifically with those with lived experience and specifically with the Indigenous community. So I would like to see this bylaw repealed and have that corrected and come back with a bylaw that I think is better, that isn't going to just result in people's homes being removed and them having to move back the next day because there isn't shelter space, there isn't these supports that all my colleagues seem to want to happen and I want to happen. Those supports don't exist. So the reality is going to be an endless cycle where we are criminalizing or at least, you know, providing financial penalties to people who have nowhere else to go, and we'll be back in very short order. So not in favor of this. I would love to see us try again and with more extensive consultation come up with something that's focused on harm reduction and compassion. And again, like AMO wants us to, actually getting people into housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Councillor Stevens.
Mayor, I just a couple questions. I need some clarification. Is Guelph, are they part of a region?
No, Guelph's a single tier, so.
Okay, and Oshawa as well?
Is a part of Durham region, so it is a local area municipality.
No, and so, just to get my head around this, so they already have these existing bylaws?
So Guelph introduced the public space use bylaw in late summer of last year. To the question about 11 encampments, and Councillor Miller is correct, they have control over where they build shelters and supportive housing and everything else. So I would argue maybe they were doing a better job initially in getting housing built in the first place. Oshawa brought in their version of this in 2019. As I said, Mayor Carter has, I believe it was 2019, he said, 2019 or 2018, but he said that the success of the bylaw is the reason why.
With them having a region above them as well, do they have more housing available to them than we do?
I believe that I can't comment on. The comment that was made to me is that the housing in Oshawa, like whatever the region of Durham offers, is full there. So
yeah, no, because I was just looking. I can see why it's comparable. The population is very similar to Guelph and St. Catharines. The area size is the same, and they show 11 encampments. We have 43. So obviously they've done something to help that. So that's where I was just kind of going with that. But you told me that. All right. Okay. Thanks.
any other questions or comments? Councillor Mako.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, at the bottom of page 2, and it talks about the communications plan, it mentions while resources are being secured, a public education period on the new model and bylaw will take place in coordination with partners. I think that's really important. I do support what Councillor Miller was saying about public engagement, and just wondering if there's a defined timeline we could attach to that, because I know hiring is going to take some time for the bylaw officers, but I guess I'm just a bit nervous enforcement's just going to start one day. And so I just wonder if someone could speak to, I don't know if it's through you to the Deputy CAO, could you talk a bit more about that public education period? What does it involve? Who's doing it? And just, is there maybe a defined time period for how long that public education and engagement period would last?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Mako. I will say that the direction from Council on April 29th does say that while resources are being put in place, that a public education period shall commence immediately. So our communication channels, our websites have been updated in preparation for this evening, as well as, even though we have that direction that the resources be put in place as soon as possible, hiring, acquisition of fleet, that takes months. So we understand council's desire that the enforcement be expedited as quickly as possible per the April 29th motion. At the same time, hiring of these resources and acquisition of fleet will take a matter of months.
Thank you. I think a few months at least is a smart idea for the public education period, so happy to hear that. My second question was just about evaluation of the bylaw and the performance measures. We talk about the Hamilton monthly or weekly report as being an example. I'm just wondering if that template could be shared with council. I'd just like to see what are the performance measures that they're using to determine success. So that way I know we're not calling this a pilot project, but if we were to treat it as such, how are we as council to assess whether it's having the desired impact or not?
Through the mayor to Councillor Mako, we can pull that and share it with council. Staff still have to vet it to make sure the data that is available to council is available to us. Cities as large as Hamilton have a lot more resources and data availability at their disposal than a community of our size, plus they're a single tier, so they have a little bit more information. So we will circulate that for council's information, because we know council directed that to be a potential model we look at, with a caveat that we might not have the same data availability, that it might not look identical, but certainly we will use that to inform our reporting.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Just wanting to ensure this is data-driven as much as possible.
Thank you, Councillor Mako. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had one question about the, it's to do with the communication channels and the target audience. And under partners, I wondered if we could include Reach Niagara. Thank you. That's all.
Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I'll provide a few final comments. With respect to the financing of this, obviously the tax rate stabilization reserve has been identified for 2025. It's my intention as a part of the 2026 budget process to bring this forward, not with the entire $700,000 as a part of the tax levy for next year, to phase in the tax levy hit. So half, $350,000 in 2026, $350,000 in 2027, so that it is then entirely on the levy and not drawing from the tax rate stabilization reserve. I mentioned earlier, and I'll reiterate, the reality is the costs don't actually go away. If council chooses not to pass this, those costs will continue to mount. We've seen that because we've had to draw back from other things we're trying to do to deal with the worsening problem. And so the costs of keeping our parks clean and safe don't disappear if we say no to this. They just wind up stealing from other areas, or we wind up with a budget amendment to increase just the cleanup. But we're not actually able to be proactive. We're not able to try and make sure that the sensitive areas we've identified in this bylaw are kept safe. And that ultimately is the thing that we are doing with this bylaw. I've heard a lot of people state their opposition to the bylaw, but when they do that, they never explain how close to an elementary school they think encampments should be set up, or how close to a playground these encampments should be set up, or how close to people's backyards or side fences they should be set up. Right now, we run into problems where the kids at Connaught School are asking me when I go and visit a grade 3 class, why do I have to step over a pile of needles to get to school each day? We have situations where we heard Ms. Miller speak earlier this evening at Bartlett Park, having to deal with people threatening the kids and the parents in the park, needles having to be cleaned up. We run into situations like on the Terry Fox Trail where people are built up right against the rear fence line and are not being good neighbors, and they're intimidating the people that live in those homes. A lot of people have said, that this will push people deep into the woods. I don't actually think that's the case. The reality is there are some areas in the community that won't be prohibited, and some of these encampments will wind up in those places. My hope is that really sends a message to the regional level of government that they have to actually do something. And I wish people would put their energy into pushing the region to do its job, because I hear a lot about reports that are written, but not action that's being taken. This council, as was stated, found land for a temporary shelter a couple of years ago on Riordan. This council transferred a piece of property worth $5.2 million to the region to get bridge housing built. And I will just point out, by the way, bridge housing is the #1 most important thing. I have said to regional staff, I want 3 of those facilities in this community, because the only way we're actually going to find a solution for homelessness is through the bridge housing that the region is currently offering. But this council transferred that piece of property. At the region, I tried to get a temporary shelter built over the winter to try and accommodate the people that couldn't find housing, and it was shot down by regional council. They didn't want to go down that path. I wish individuals in the community would put more focus on the region, because the region has the mandate. The region has the responsibility. And I take responsibility as a regional councillor, which is why, meeting after meeting, I raise the exact same concerns. And I try to explain to them why this is the thing we have to spend money on. I don't want to build shelters, I want to build housing. I've been unequivocal from the beginning in this job, and I've pushed very hard to try and convince my colleagues at the regional council table. I would love it if more people were pushing with me. Because when people get upset about a bylaw we've introduced to try and make sure that homeless encampments and needles don't wind up in school playgrounds, I really start to wonder. The city is doing its part. We are most definitely not trying to hide the problem right now. We're doing the opposite. We're trying to make sure that this is very clear while at the same time fulfilling our mandate. Because at the end of the day, our mandate is to keep our community safe for all residents. And an encampment is not the best option for anybody's housing. So I sincerely hope council approves this plan and allows us to start moving forward with the education piece and then the enforcement. And I hope the folks in the community that are working with unhoused individuals help to make sure they're in places that make sense, that aren't close to sensitive uses. Because that's the best outcome for them in the short term. In the medium and long term, and hopefully the short term, we get more housing built. And I appreciate the councillors who have said they agree wholeheartedly. I think probably every councillor in this horseshoe agrees wholeheartedly with that hoped for outcome. But that's a regional responsibility, and we have to make sure that they're fulfilling their responsibility. So with that, I will look to the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Lindell.
Yes.
Councillor Mako.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
No.
Councillor Ratzlaff.
No.
Councillor Stevens.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Mayor Cisco.
Yes.
That's carried.
Thank you. Moving on to item 10.2, investigation of Pier docking passes for local residents. And prior to discussing the motion, council will hear a delegation from Dwayne Christie. Mr. Christie? Come on up. Mr. Christie, the lectern is yours.
But thank you for having me here, guys. I'd like to first say, like tonight, we've talked about airports, helicopters, trains, homelessness, housing, and I'm here to talk about boats. So we're going to lighten it up a little bit. I'd like to thank Mr. Townsend for bringing and listening to my concerns. So thank you for that. As Mayor said, my name is Dwayne Christie, and I currently reside in the city. I have been a boater here for about 10 years. If any of you have enjoyed our beautiful lake and had the opportunity to bring your vessel up to the pier on the west side, it is amazing. You can dock on the pier, you can go and enjoy all the downtown facilities, get a cup of coffee, go for an ice cream, have a nice dinner, enjoy the festivals, see the fireworks, a multitude of things. This year I purchased the beach pass. I've done that for the last 3 years as well, and that allows me to bring my car into the parking lot and to use the parking lot to do the same things, especially at Sunset Beach where I cannot bring my boat. I'm urging council to consider doing something similar for the local residents that are paying into the tax base to use the West Pier. There are a number of marinas in the area already that provide services for boats, including pump outs, water supply, a bunch of different things that boaters are used to. The pier has always been a for-charge facility, not that it's been ever collected properly over the years. I'm the first to admit that I've parked there over the 10 years and probably paid 5 times. So I'm not trying to hide that fact, and I think everybody in the gallery today that's here to provide their support to my motion or to Councillor's motion would agree to that. Last year, so I know that the yacht club was enlisted, and they did that for a year or two, and last year there was a point where there was nobody, and now there is somebody new called Lakeside Park Marina. They themselves call themselves a marina but have no amenities. So the only amenity they have is your pier and the electrical services that you offer. Local boaters have access to that pier, as do every other boater across the lake and in every municipality. My issue is with the fact that local residents who own a boat that go to use that pier have to pay the same price as somebody coming across from Toronto. You have multi-million-dollar yachts coming across to use that pier. Multi-million, huge boats. If you've been down there, you've seen them. There's charter boats going across there. We all pay the same amount of money. I'm encouraging you guys to consider the fact that local residents should be able to use that pier at a discount, similar to that as the beach parking pass. Secondly, I'm going to encourage you guys to bring that marina and the charges associated with it and the management associated with that back in-house. I don't think that we have the right, I don't think that you need to have somebody, a third party, operate this facility for you. I don't think it's necessary. I think what you can do is you can take a student and do the same thing that this marina, they're calling themselves a marina, can do. What additional services could a student offer? They could catch a line. You're giving a summer student a job. They're going to say hello. They're going to tell you where you can go in downtown Port Dalhousie and what services are there for you guys to use. Is this new marina, Lakeside Park Marina, going to be able to do the same thing? Currently, there's nobody there to catch your line. As a boater, and everybody in the gallery that's a boater will know that you'd like to have somebody on the dock to catch your line. There are other marinas across the lake that do just something similar, where you pull up, and up north, the same thing. You pull up, you bring your boat up, and there's somebody there. Here, throw me your line. They catch your line. As a boater, that's a huge, huge thing. Today on the pier, you don't have that. Why not give a summer student a job, give them some direction, bring it all back in-house? That's the first thing. The second thing is this new marina. I've recently found out, I called them a couple weeks ago to get my idea what the cost was going to be, and I was originally told it was going to be 60 cents per linear foot, minimum 4 hours, blah, blah, blah. Came out to $68. So to go get a coffee or an ice cream with my family on my boat was going to cost me $68 to put the boat on the wall. That's not a lie. I called again this morning, and all of a sudden, miraculously, that all changed. Now it's $15. So it's still going to cost me $15 to bring my boat, put it on the wall, go get an ice cream, and if I decide to do that the next day, it's another $15. Why does this make sense for a local boater? A local boater who's already in a marina should have the ability to just go, get on the wall, tie up the lines, and pay a yearly fee to be there. It should be paid to this city and not to a third party. I think basically that sums up what I'm looking for. There's a lot of confusion in the boating community amongst all of us boaters on who's responsible for collecting these fees. Does it actually come to the city? Does it stay with the third party? So my motion, or my ask of you is to consider 2 things: bringing it back in-house and to consider some type of a discount for local boaters to use that pier. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Christie. We have Councillor Townsend, followed by Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thank you, Mr. Christie, for your presentation today and your enthusiasm and passion on this. It was certainly not something I was well aware of until it did come to be. My question is, you've been a boater there for several years. Have you noticed, have the costs been in the past lower when the city has managed it? Because what I understand is the city used to do it, and now they have a third party operating it. Do you recall what the difference in fees were?
Last year, when I went to moor on the wall, the gentleman came over to me in he came over to me with a cell phone and like a little cube, and he said, "You have to pay to be on the wall." And I said, "Okay, well, are you with the city? Like, can I see some ID? Can I see something?" And he provided me with absolutely nothing. He said, "No, you just need to be paid to be here." Well, I'm not going to just give somebody my credit card and have them slide it through their phone. So to answer your question, no. I don't know what the cost was last year because I refused to pay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? The year before, it was nominal. It was something similar. I think when the overnight is when you had to pay. So like if you're just going there for 3 or 4 hours, they didn't bother you. You just tied off, you threw your lines and away it went. And fellow boaters in the gallery can tell you that. Like we never really had to pay to be there for 3 hours to go get an ice cream. Of course, you're overnighting, you're using the hydro, we all expected to pay. And many of the local boaters do that just for fun.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. Councillor Phillips, followed by Councillor McPherson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. And I know what you mean. I have a cousin who has a sailboat in Prescott, and he sailed it up and stayed on the dock for 3 days, and he thought it was a really good deal. Are you suggesting that local boaters like pay an annual fee to dock there? Say, for example, in Sunset Beach, if you want to launch your boat there, I think it's $100 a year, and you have a pass to do that. Is that what you're suggesting, that local boaters would pay a nominal fee? You'd have a, I don't know, sticker on your windshield or a card or something like that?
So a little clarity, Mr. Phillips. All boats have a registration number on the front of their bow.
Right.
Even jet skis have to have that. Mm-hmm. My suggestion is that somehow we use that registration number to create some type of a database where if you register and you're deemed to be a local boater, you can buy a seasonal pass to be on the West Pier wall. I'm not suggesting we do anything with Sunset Beach because I'm not familiar with that process there. I'm speaking only to the West Pier. So yes, I'm suggesting we do something similar to what we do with the beach parking pass for the boaters that use the West Pier wall.
Okay, so your registration number would almost be like a license plate?
It's like a license plate for a boat, exactly.
Right. What would you, as a seasoned boater, what would you suggest an annual fee would be?
As a tax-paying resident, I don't believe I should have to pay anything.
Okay.
So that's my opinion. So $15 is what I have to pay to use a municipal parking lot when I go down to get an ice cream. I think that's a fair number.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that realistic? You guys need to make that decision.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for being here. I know that we just, or as part of the last budget process, we approved the rates and fees for the docking and the pier usage. Since I'm not a boater, nor do I have one, or
it's fun.
Well, is it all right? Okay,
it's
good.
fun.
Thank you. Do you think that the fees that the city has set are the current fees that are being charged by the company running the pier, are they higher than what the city has approved in our budget process last year?
I'm not familiar with what the city approved last year. I just know what this particular Lakeside Park Marina is charging to be on the wall.
Okay.
That's all I know.
I'll ask staff. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Christie. Mr. Christie, you mentioned about attending other public harbors and other locations. How does it typically work there? Do you book in advance or?
No, you can show up unannounced. You call in via VHF radio and you say, hey, I'm coming in. Do you have an empty slip? Yes, traditionally you would have to reserve a spot. I can give you a great example of one of the marinas in Oakville. This is what they do. So if you come in and you harbor in their marina, you pay a $15 fee to be there, okay? And that $15 fee is for the day.
That's a flat rate?
That's a flat rate. If you go into town and you spend your money in their restaurants or their bars or get an ice cream and you bring that receipt back to that marina, they give you your money back. They're encouraging people to use the downtown businesses, and that's why I'm here. As a local boater, I want to go across that pier, and I want to go spend my money in downtown Port. I don't want to have to pay $15 every time I show up to go get an ice cream cone. That, to me, doesn't make any sense. Okay. Instead, you're going to make me drive my car around, park my car. Why not allow me to bring my boat over?
Now, is the boating experience the same as the vehicular experience in Port Louisiana? On peak weekends, it's difficult to find space in the harbor?
It definitely can get that way. One of the other things that I would encourage is that if you could consider reserving with the new company, or if you brought it back in, if you could say, these 10 spots are reserved for 3 hours only. You cannot reserve these spots for any longer than 3 hours. That way, they're always moving around. But again, you need to have somebody there to enforce that. Maybe it's by law, the parking enforcement that walks down and checks the whole numbers of boats. And I just don't feel that we need a marina to enforce this.
Thank you, Mr. Christie. It's nice to hear Christie in the council chamber again.
Thanks, Bruce, I appreciate that.
I was wondering if someone was going to raise that or not. All right.
Yeah, now you're embarrassing me.
Then we try. That's the goal. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Christie, for your presentation. Always a pleasure to see you. Can I have a motion to receive the delegation? Councillor Townsend, Councillor Phillips, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. So we move on to the motion, which is moved by Councillor Townsend, seconded by Councillor Williamson. And I will look to Councillor Townsend to kick us off.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, the motion is rather straightforward. I'm not going to go through all the whereas clauses. I'm sure councillors have had a chance to review it, but before I read the motion, I do have a question of staff. Should I read the motion first, or can I ask that question to staff first?
You can do it either way.
Okay, thank you.
I'll leave it up to you.
Thank you. So through you to staff, my question is, we have a third-party operator I was not aware of. Why isn't the city operating this rather than, why isn't the city operating it and having a third party now operate it?
Through the mayor to Councillor Townsend, that's something we can look into in terms of when the service delivery model, the evolution of it. And if council wishes, we could provide options and any barriers to the service delivery model in the report as requested.
Thank you for that. My other question is just the revenues that are collected, do those go to the city or do they go to the marina?
Through the mayor to the councillor, there'd be an annual licensing agreement to lease the transient dockage space. The collection of any revenues would be granted to the operator. But we would lease the space to the operator.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. I'll just read the be it resolved clauses to council. Just therefore be it resolved that council directs staff to investigate the feasibility of implementing a resident Pier docking pass program, including options for seasonal or daily access, pass eligibility criteria, potential costs and revenue associated with such a program. Be it further resolved that staff consult with relevant stakeholders as part of this investigation. Be it further resolved that staff report back to council with findings and recommendations for council for potential implementation as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Miller.
Yeah, I know the therefore it's about investigating the feasibility, but I just want to ask staff their initial opinion of that. I know that the parking in Port Dalhousie is really not actually a user fee, even though it probably should be. It really just covers the administration of the program and remains probably the greatest deal that's ever been had. I think it's about 30 cents a day right now. What's the feasibility? I know, but we ran into a lot of issues trying to implement that program the first year. Are we anticipating any sort of would this be administratively difficult, do we think, or less, hopefully less so than the parking?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Miller, that's something we would have to investigate in the report, as well as the appropriate fees based on current charges and what's in our rates and fees bylaw, and how they compare in terms of the cost of providing the service relative to the parking.
Okay, yep, fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just kind of following along Councillor Miller, do we know the difference in price of what council approved versus what the third party is charging at this point? I mean, is there a big gap, or is it a small gap, or do we have any idea at this point?
Through the mayor to the councillor, pricing was included as part of the RFP process for the operator to win win the opportunity to host there. It's certainly something we can report back on as the CAO has identified.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I think, I mean, we did set the rates and fees just last year, so if it's part of what we've done as a council in making those rates and fees, I understand that there was a lot of confusion in previous years at the pier. Again, I'm not a boater, but I have friends who have boats. I know. So I know that there was some confusion. So I think if there's also an opportunity to have a report back from the operator to kind of provide feedback as well, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mako.
Stand by. Thank you, Mayor. Through you, there is an amendment to the motion. It's the therefore clause up there, and I'm just hoping with Councillor Tanzan that's friendly to additional. Alexia, I believe, has put it up there. Thank you. That's fair.
That's
all.
friendly?
Thank you.
Okay. Who's and Councillor Williamson? That's friendly as well? Yes. Okay. All right, Councillor Williamson's up next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to thank Councillor Townsend, even though he's kind of invading our turf a little bit, for spearheading this, working with the local boating community, and in particular Mr. Christie, and he has consulted with Councillor Mako and I through the process. And I'm happy to second this. We need a consistent, fair, transparent process, and one that is welcoming, as Mr. Christie pointed out. So hopefully this will pass and will lead to us making it more accessible for local boaters, as well as improving the process overall.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure whether the mover would be able to answer this question or if it would be something that staff could answer, but in the be it further resolved, staff consult with relevant stakeholders as part of the investigation. Who would be the relevant stakeholders? Okay.
And the boaters.
So for the edification of folks at home, the marina was indicated, boaters, those are the relevant stakeholders. DYC, the Duluth Yacht Club. Just want to make sure that that's out there so people on YouTube can hear it.
That's what I'm wondering too. And it's just, how is it going to get out there to those particular parties? So they'll contact them?
I would look to staff. I mean, I would assume we'd probably use the Engage STC portal, but we'd also reach out to those partners that are in and around the harbor with information and send it through to them. That's the way we would normally do consultation with those sorts of groups.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Harris.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, too. I'm trying to think who would be the best. Maybe the deputy CAO. We're doing a full kind of parking review right now, and I would think it might be prudent to perhaps include this in future planning. So perhaps talk to the consultant about parking, because there's a lot of similarities between passes and things. So I was hoping, I don't know if this is a direction, or would that make sense?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, it's not something we can include in the specific scope, but as it relates to the technologies, and I'll defer to Director Douglas on this a bit, the availability of those technologies and the applicability to boat parking is something we could inquire about.
I guess my question is, if we're doing a full-scale review of parking, it would kind of make sense moving forward in the future to include, like, the idea of the piers in that, right? So the same technologies would apply. So I'm not sure if you could include it in the parking thing right now, or I don't know.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, as the Deputy CAO has indicated, the current scope of work for the parking services review has been identified. But as you've indicated and requested, that is something that we could look at, the applicability of including the boat parking traffic as long with other parking studies.
Perfect. So would I include that as a direction in there so we know what's going to happen?
I think it's been taken as direction.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Councillor Phillips.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. As far as the fees are concerned, we heard that one day they were $65 and the next day they were $15, which is very strange. Are our fees not listed on our, like, on the website as to what if somebody's coming from Toronto for the day? Are they not listed on the website, or is there not 3 or 4 signs along the dock so that when people show up, they'll know how much an hour is, how much 4 hours is, how much a day is? Because there shouldn't be any surprises, and people should be able to tell immediately how much they're going to pay. it's going to take a while to put in place what Mr. Christie and Councillor Townsend are asking for, I realize. But as far as just so there isn't any confusion about fees, that could be done very short term. And it should be balanced with our rates and fees, because I'm sure dockage is part of our rates and fees.
Through the mayor to the councillor, the operator's fees are listed on our website, and there's a calculator depending on the size of your boat and whether you need shore power. So it's published and it's available. Through the mayor to the councillor, I'm not aware of that. I manage the lease agreement itself, but I'm confident that if there was a member that was working for them that had the handheld pay system, I'm confident there's some signage up there as well. And certainly we can report back on that to council and take some pictures and verify that. You got that, councillor.
All right. Seeing no other questions or comments, I will look to the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Lindell.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Stevens.
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Aye, aye.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Mako.
Yes.
Mayor Cisco.
Yes,
That's carried.
it was unanimous. Okay. Councillor Townsend, can you press your button just for a second? And then turn it off? Or actually, just give us a second. We're just trying to clear up a technical problem. It says that you're waiting to be able to speak, and I can't clear the queue, and I can't go to the next counselor when you press your button. Okay. Okay, so turn your button off, on, just leave it. Or actually, can you turn him off? Is there any way to reset the system?
I guess I'll just speak the rest of the night.
Okay, so we may have to do that. So we're going to take a 5-minute recess. Okay. Councilors, we got to clear up a technical problem, so we're going to take a 5-minute recess. All right, folks, welcome back. Very quickly, I'm just going to go around the horseshoe and make sure that everybody can actually jump in. So, Councillor Mako, can you press your button?
Test, test.
Wonderful. Councillor Harris.
Hello.
Okay, Councillor Lindell.
Hello.
Councillor Williamson.
Howdy.
Councillor Dodge.
Hello.
Councillor McPherson.
Hello.
Councillor Phillips.
Present.
Councillor Ratzlaff. Hey. Councillor Townsend.
Hey.
Councillor Miller.
Hello.
And Councillor Stevens.
Testing.
All right, so we are going to do this as we describe it, old school. So basically the way it works is similar to when we're in camera. If you want to be acknowledged by me, I just put your hand up. I'll try and catch everybody and keep a list going. Yeah, we'll do it that way. And please don't turn your button, don't hit your button until I call on you, just because that can get kind of confusing. So we're on to item 9.2. This is moved by Councillor Harris and seconded by Councillor Townsend. So I'm going to start with Councillor Harris, and if there are any other speakers to the motion. Before we do that, let me just read this. The explanation, this is 195 Vine Street, and then the public meeting from May 12th. It was deferred at that meeting. Council tabled an amended recommendation that the developer replace appropriate fencing and provide a landscape plan to include tree replacement, all to the satisfaction of the city, and deferred the decision to the meeting of May 26, 2025, which is today, to receive a written response from the applicant. The response from the owner was received and placed on the council agenda on Thursday, May 22nd. So we have Councillor Harris moving the amended motion. Councillor Harris, you have the floor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Director of Planning and Building Department. So we referred this back to staff, and are staff comfortable with the outcome?
Through the chair to the councillor, yes, after reviewing the correspondence provided by the applicant, it does demonstrate compliance with council's requests of the last meeting.
Perfect, thank you.
Are there? Okay, Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to staff. I understand you've spoken with the developer. Have you had a chance to speak to the lovely person that presented here last meeting to see if they were satisfied with the conversations with the developer?
Through the chair to the councillor, no, staff have not been in contact with them. The direction was to the applicant to undertake those mitigation efforts on their own.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm satisfied with the correspondence. I want to make sure that it looks like it's been resolved, and thank you, staff, for doing this, and look forward to supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In response to Councillor Townsend's request, the two residents were here earlier. They just left. They probably, I don't know, couldn't stand the excitement of council, I guess. So, but I did speak to them beforehand, and they did say that the developer did go and provide, did give them the money back for grass seed, did provide dirt, and did repair their fence, and did the stuff that they were asked to do. They told me that was done today, so.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Are there any other questions or comments with respect to this? All right, then, momentarily, I will look to the clerk to call the roll on this deferred motion, deferred and amended motion. Are we leaving the two amendments in there, given that we can, I think we can, the mover and seconder, we can remove the amendments?
I agree to remove them.
Okay, so we can take out the red, and we're back to the original motion. So I will look to the clerk at this time to call the roll.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Stevens.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Lindell.
Yep.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Mako.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Mayor Cisco.
Yes.
That's carried.
Right, item 9.3, Legal and Clerk Services, Office of the City Clerk, Councillor appointments to bodies previously filled by Councillor Garcia. The May 12, 2025 meeting, Council approved appointments to the First Ontario Performing Arts Centre Board and the Neil Peart Commemorative Task Force, and deferred the appointment of the St. Catharines Hydro Board, Inc. Board of Directors to the May 26, 2025 Council meeting. Prior to the May 12th meeting, members of Council were contacted to put their names forward to be appointed to the St. Catharines Hydro, Inc. Board of Directors. Councillor Stevens, Ratzlaff, and Williamson put their names forward. We will go to a ballot system for those councillors in person. For those in person, please select only the councillor you wish to appoint. For the councillors on Zoom, please email Donna Del Vecchio and Alexi Vrabsinjak. Now, with who you would like to appoint, staff will then tally the results to prepare the motion for council's consideration. As a reminder, the procedural bylaw requires that the ballots be recorded in the meeting minutes. All right, folks, we will move on from 9.3 while we wait for the votes to be tallied. We are on to item 10.1, an update to the sign bylaw, digital signage on privately owned plazas and shopping centers. Moving this motion, I have Councillor Townsend and Councillor Phillips is seconding, and I will give the first spot to Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Spoke with Director of Planning on this. One thing I do want to change is at the very end, just can you change that to Q1 of 2026, just to give staff the appropriate time to research other municipalities and how they are addressing this. Essentially, I'll go to the therefore clauses, whereas a lot of plazas are installing these larger digital ads on their plazas or shopping centers. I'm asking that council direct staff to undertake a review of the city's sign bylaw with a specific intent of identifying opportunities to permit and regulate digital signage on privately owned plazas, shopping centers. Be it further resolved, the staff consult with local business owners, commercial property managers, the St. Catharines Downtown Association, and other relevant stakeholders to inform the proposed amendments. And be it further resolved that staff report back with recommended updates to the sign bylaw, including proposed guidelines for location, size, brightness, content restrictions, and hours of operation for digital signage by Q1 2026. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor. Asking for, yes, for staff to report back on changes to the bylaw. All right, seeing no other comments, the one thing I will just add, and I appreciate Councillor Townsend for bringing this forward, I think it's timely. One of the things that I've noticed, and I'm sure others have, is there are digital signs in the community. Some of those digital signs are skirting our bylaw in interesting ways, maybe indicating thank you for this donation from insert massive advertisement of electronics store. Which is most definitely not the intention of the current bylaw. So I appreciate this because I think we need to revamp entirely. It's been 15 years, Councillor Phillips, since it was one of the very first things Councillor Harris and I experienced as councillors was the brand new, wonderful sign bylaw. And I'm sure we can all remember the cast of characters, a very influential cast of characters who come forward when the sign bylaw is mentioned. So I will look to the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff?
Yes.
Councillor Stevens?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Mako?
Yes.
Councillor Lindell?
Yes.
Mayor Cisco?
Yes.
That's carried.
All right, are there any notices of motion? Seeing none. Are there any report requests? I have a report request. So the first report request will be that staff report back on the possibility of having a curbside address painting initiative. And I will simply point out, I had a very informative conversation with a resident this week who proposed it. Other municipalities have done it. There have been some studies in some of those municipalities with respect to emergency services wait times. I guess there was a pilot project in Hamilton and they found actually a 4.1 minute reduction in the time for emergency services to arrive at a relevant property. That seems significant when the chances of dying of a heart attack increase quite a bit every minute, and I'm sure Councillor Mako could indicate exactly what that number is, but I don't think we need to get there today. Anyway, so I'm making the request for staff to report back. I have Councillor McPherson, Phillips, and then Councillor Dodge. So Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A report request from staff regarding increasing the height of side and backyard fencing from 6 feet to 8 feet.
Okay, so that'll be your report request on increasing the height in the bylaw. Did you have a date on that one?
As soon as possible.
Okay, so before the summer?
Before the summer.
All right, Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This one, I guess, I'll direct to the Director of EFES, and that is to explore the viability of extending the road entering Sunset Beach through to the north to exit onto the Welland Canal Parkway in order to relieve traffic congestion.
Kudos to that. Excellent. And then Councillor Dodge. Was it the same, was it that one?
No, we had spoken about that, but you said to do it in camera. That one. But anyway, that's not my question.
Okay, I just need you to open up your mic. Oh, Councillor Phillips, you gotta turn off your mic. And you gotta open yours.
Sorry. So my question to you is on your report, what happens if you don't have a curb?
That would be reported back as a part of the staff report.
I don't see that in your request.
I think it would have to be because your point is very well taken. I know in the country they use green signs. That is generally what occurs. So it might be something similar to that, but I would leave it to staff to identify possible opportunities for that. Are there any other staff reports? I feel like this is a record. It's been a long time since we had 3 staff reports in one meeting. The deputy CAO may have just looked at me and go, this is a lot of staff reports. And I can remember the nights when we would have 7 or 8 staff reports being requested every council meeting. And that was back when we met weekly. You're welcome. It's a gift. It's the deputy CAO is right. It's a gift. Can I get a motion to pass all of these report requests? Councillor Harris, Councillor Dodge, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Yes. All right, we're going to pause for a second so I can see. We're going to go back to 9.3. All right, can I have a mover and a seconder to recommend that Councillor Williamson be appointed to the St. Catharines Hydro Inc. Board of Directors? Councillor Dodge, Councillor Mako. It probably should have been Councillor Harris, but Councillor Dodge and Councillor Mako. I'll look to the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor Dodge? Yes. Councillor Mako?
Yes.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
Councillor Townsend?
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff?
Yes.
Councillor Stevens?
No.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Councillor Lindo?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Mayor Cisco?
Yes.
That's carried.
All right, can I have a mover and a seconder to file the minutes of committee and task force? Councillor Harris and Councillor Phillips. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And I will look to the clerk to read the reasons for going in camera. Madam Clerk.
A motion to go into closed session for legal and clerk services, legal services, Ontario Land Tribunal, Appeal 37 Ontario Street and 3 Ontario Lane. Closed session pursuant to Municipal Act Section 239(2)E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. And F, advice is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. And a request from Councillor Harris, Sunset Beach Project, confidential update on procurement and next steps. Closed session to Municipal Act, Section 239(2)F, advice that's subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications for that purpose. And Section I, a trade secret, scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the contractual or other negotiations of a person, group, or persons or organization.
Mover and seconder to go in camera. Councillor McPherson, Councillor Lindahl. All those in favor? Opposed? In we go. Council's called back in open session. Motion arising from the closed session, 15.1 Legal and Clerk Services, Legal Services Ontario Land Tribunal Appeal, 37 Ontario Street and 3 Ontario Lane, moved by Councillor Ratzlaff, seconded by Councillor McPherson, that staff proceed as directed in closed session. I'll look to the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor Ratzlaff?
Yes.
Councillor McPherson? Councillor
Yes.
Miller?
Abstain.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
Councillor Mako?
Abstain.
Councillor Lindell?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Councillor Stevens?
Yes.
Councillor Townsend?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
Mayor Cisco?
Yes.
And that's carried.
Item 15.2, Sunset Beach Project, confidential update on procurement and next steps. The motion is to receive for information purposes. Moving is Councillor Miller, seconding is Councillor Lindell. I'll look to the clerk.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Councillor?
Some of the things we discussed, would they be coming back, like about the process and reviewing things and that? Is that in camera, or should I ask that out here?
I'm going to look to the mover and seconder, and that a report be forthcoming on issues related to the in-camera discussion. Are you comfortable with that? I think Councillor Harris raised process issues. I think that specifically, and we can clarify, but that a further report come back to council.
Sure.
Wonderful. Councillor Lindell?
Yes.
Okay, so yes, Councillor. Look to the clerk.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Councillor Lindell?
Yes.
Councillor Mako?
Yes.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
No.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
Councillor Ratzlaff?
Yes.
Councillor Stevens?
Yes.
Councillor Townsend?
No.
Councillor Williamson? Mayor Cisco?
No.
That's carried.
Item 17 is the bylaws. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the bylaws? Councillor Townsend, Councillor Stevens, that the bylaws listed on the council agenda as A to I be read a first time, considered and passed, and be signed and executed by the mayor and the clerk. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And the motion to adjourn, who wants to do it? Councillor Lindell, Councillor McPherson, all those in favor? Opposed? Good night.